A Texas Democrat claims there are actually 6 genders. Kamala Harris came so close to visiting the border during a recent trip, but it was the wrong border. Plus, climate activist Greta Thunberg is back. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. If you're new to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to start with the Democrats and their push to completely destroy girls and women's sports, all in the name of inclusion, because they think it's okay for a man to compete in women's sports simply because he thinks he's a woman or wants to act like a woman, as if his thoughts or his feelings somehow now trump biology and physiology and fairness and common sense. But here's the deal with the Democrats. They don't actually care about fairness. They don't care about inclusion. This is about destroying the fabric of normalcy that binds us all together. And here's what's so frustrating. In addition to Democrats saying they support women and women's rights, but showing clearly that they don't, they also say the science is on their side. Remember that? We need to follow the science. Well, they're doing it here. For an example, in Texas, there's a debate. There's a bill that would bar males from competing in female sports K through 12. And one Texas Democrat is arguing against it, saying, hey, there's not 2 sexes, 2 genders. There are actually 6. And here's the story. A Harvard-educated Texas Democrat lawmaker drew double takes for declaring at a hearing that there are 6 sexes, prompting a rebuke from skeptics who said his count was off by 4. Texas State Representative James Talarico made his pronouncement prior to public testimony Tuesday before the Public Education Committee on House Bill 4042, a measure to bar transgender athletes from girls K through 12 scholastic sports. Mr. Talarico, a former English teacher, first quizzed Republican State Rep Cole Hefner, the bill's sponsor, on how many sexes there are. Mr. Hefner said there were 2. The bill seems to think there are 2, said Mr. Talarico, who holds an MA in education policy from Harvard. The one thing I want us all to be aware of and recognize is that modern science obviously recognizes that there are many more than 2 biological sexes. In fact, there are 6, which honestly, Representative Hefner, surprised me too. In fact, there are 6? What is this guy talking about? It just shows it's just another example that the left will push any crazy narrative and they will use science that they say to back it up. And here's what you have to watch out for. Whenever they talk about modern science or new breakthroughs or the latest trend, watch out, because it is probably some left-wing study or data or statistics that are so obscure, it's not actually part of the argument. We all know there are 2 genders or 2 sexes. I'll use those interchangeably. XX for female, XY for male. That's it. You have those. You have genetic abnormalities, differences based on those. That's what they should be. But here's what Talarico says. He explained that there are 6 really common biological sexes based on X and Y chromosomes, not just XX for female and XY for male, but also single X, XXY, XYY, and XXXY. The point is that biologically speaking, scientifically speaking, sex is a spectrum and oftentimes can be very ambiguous, Mr. Talarico said. Sex is a spectrum. Wrong. That's what he's saying. It's not men and women. It's this spectrum. We know that's 100% wrong. But here's the thing. The most frustrating thing that he said in that statement is not actually that. It's that it can be oftentimes very ambiguous to determine. Oftentimes? No, never, rarely, hardly at all. You have men and women. It is not oftentimes ambiguous. We know the difference, folks. And here's the other part of the argument. It doesn't even matter if you have these other genetic abnormalities. The actual issue is females, XX, versus males, XY. Doesn't matter if there's the others, because in this debate, that's what we're talking about. They want to distract and say, oh, there's the others. You never see them. It's statistically almost 0, but hey, we're going to throw them in anyway. This is a debate. I'm having men participate in women's sports. The Democrats want to push it, and it violates everything that we know to be normal and obvious and common sense. That's what they're pushing, and this guy's pushing his 6 genders. All right, so next let's talk about Kamala Harris. But first, if you're new to the show or haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified. We're making our push for 150,000 subscribers, and we can do it with your help. All right, so now let's talk about Kamala Harris, because over a month ago, she was appointed to be the border crisis czar. She was going to solve the problem at the southern border. But here's the deal. She's not doing anything about it. She hasn't even visited the southern border. But on a recent trip, she came close to the border, the northern border, the wrong one. She took a trip to New Hampshire, and here's the story. Vice President Kamala Harris on Friday was greeted by protesters in New Hampshire who urged her to visit the U.S.-Mexico border in her role as the Biden administration's migration czar. A handful of protesters brandished signs near Plymouth, New Hampshire, including one that read, "Mexico, 2,254 miles, according to a pool report." Another sign said, "Hey Kamala, stop the illegal invasion. Go visit Mexico." Yet another sign said, "Impeach Biden-Harris." Harris was in New Hampshire to promote President Biden's more than $2 trillion infrastructure proposal. She made a similar trip Monday to North Carolina and will travel next week to Baltimore to mark the Biden administration's first 100 days. So she's traveling to North Carolina, she's traveling to New Hampshire, but the border crisis czar has yet to visit the southern border, has yet to do anything about it. And it's been over a month since she's had a press conference. But check this out. She will finally be having a meeting with the president of Mexico. Yep, they're going to be meeting, but it's going to be virtual, not going to the southern border, and the border crisis won't even be the main topic. It'll be tree planting. Here's the story. The White House announced Harris will hold a virtual meeting with Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador on May 7th to discuss migration, but that will not be the main focus of the discussion, according to the Daily Mail. Mexico's top diplomat revealed the news and said the video meeting will focus on Mexico's questioned tree planting program. Lopez Obrador is trying to get the United States to help fund a massive expansion of the program into Central America as a way to stem migration. It comes amid a dramatic surge in illegal crossings at the border, with more than 172,000 encounters in March alone, including a historic number of unaccompanied children. Harris's office said in a statement that the meeting will focus on the common goals of prosperity, good governance, and addressing the root causes of migration. Tree planting. Yep, that's going to do a ton to stop the hundreds of thousands of people who have come to the border illegally this year. Over 100,000 border crossings, illegal border crossings, just in March, closer to 200,000. Then you have January and February. It's hundreds of thousands, and the Biden administration is doing nothing. Kamala Harris is doing nothing, as the borders are. But hey, we'll go talk about tree planting. All right, next, let's talk about Greta Thunberg, because as you know, Joe Biden held a virtual meeting, a virtual climate summit. Remember that? He's holding a summit on Zoom, social distance from others in the room, and he still has a mask on. None of these other world leaders are wearing a mask, but he has it. But in light of this climate summit, there were climate hearings on Capitol Hill, and they invited Greta Thunberg. Remember her?
You all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
So yep, Thunberg was invited to Congress. She was invited to testify, and she basically said that the U.S. is a disgrace because they're still using fossil fuels.
If you compare the current so-called climate policies to the overall current best available science, you clearly see that there's a huge gap. It is the year 2021. The fact that we are still having this discussion, and even more that we are still subsidizing fossil fuels directly or indirectly using taxpayer money, is a disgrace.
First of all, why is Congress even bringing her in? She's a kid. She's no expert. She's no scientist. And yet they bring her in to testify before Congress. And here's the deal, folks. All of this environmental push to get rid of fossil fuels has nothing to do with protecting the environment. They don't talk about the cost of developing rechargeable batteries or solar panels, the the environmental costs and that. No, they just act like it doesn't exist at all. And this is all about hurting the United States. Wealth redistribution, while places like China and India continue to massively pollute. Our emissions actually have gone down without any Paris Accords, just work on our own. But they bring in Greta Thunberg to act like some kind of expert. Another person who's talking it up is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also not a climate expert, but she is reintroducing her Green New Deal, and at a press conference, she had some pretty interesting statements. And here you go.
The Green New Deal also, importantly, recognizes the systemic cause of climate change. Because while climate change is a planetary crisis, it is not caused by an environmental or random, it does not have a random or environmental genesis. It's not just human caused, it's societally caused.
What? If you didn't understand that, that's okay. I have a hard time too, because she says it's not just caused by humans, it's caused by society. But wait, humans living together, working with humans, doing human things, that's society, right? But she goes on to say more.
We must recognize in legislation that the trampling of indigenous rights is a cause of climate change. The trampling of racial justice is a cause of climate change, because we are allowing people and we are allowing ourselves to make sure, we are allowing folks to deny ourselves human rights and deny people the right to health care, the right to housing and education.
Wow, that's a whole lot of stuff causing climate change. You've got racial injustice, you've got healthcare, you've got education. Who knew? But again, that's AOC, that's Greta Thunberg. Let's listen to the experts, right? Okay, now in that line of following the science, let's talk about COVID-19, because there are some states that are not following the science, like New York, Michigan, and others. Let's compare them to what's going on in Texas and Florida, because the interesting thing is the open states are doing better, the closed down states are doing worse. And here's the story. Republican-led states, including Texas and Florida, are reporting fewer coronavirus cases than Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York, all of which are led by prominent Democrats who refuse to roll back COVID-19 regulations and statewide mask mandates, according to CDC data. Texas Governor Greg Abbott was widely criticized by the left after he completely reversed the state's mandate on March 10th and fully reopened his state. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was also accused of endangering Florida residents when he allowed businesses to fully reopen in September without a mask mandate in place. While both states managed to keep case positivity rates down and begin the long road to economic recovery, Pennsylvania, New York, and Michigan, who are still bound to ongoing restrictions, have led the daily increase in COVID-19 cases. So look at that. Open states, no mask mandates, no lockdown orders. They are doing better than these Democrat-led states with the lockdowns and the mandates. The data show it. In fact, just from March 29th to April 4th, the states of New York, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey accounted for 44% of all new COVID cases. They are not following the science. And yet, remember this? This is Joe Biden talking about Texas.
I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. We are on the cusp of being able to fundamentally change the nature of this disease because of the way in which we're able to get vaccines in people's arms. We've been able to move that all the way up to the end of May to have enough for every American, to get every adult American to get a shot. And the last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it.
Wow. Texas and Florida are doing great. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, he's been vaccinated. He continues to wear a mask, even when alone, even on a Zoom call, not surrounded by anyone. That's what he's doing. So who's following the science and which areas are doing better? Folks, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified, and we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour. Okay, friends, thanks so much for watching. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified. And here's a special video just for you so you can watch even more of the 13-minute news hour. And don't forget to check out GOPUSA.com for the best in conservative news and commentary. We'll see you next time.